there's 4 different people when it comes to setting and achieving goals. And the idea is here where there's a positive active, a positive passive, a negative passive, and a negative active. God can provide for us, but we have to have that faith. We have to have that positive belief that what we ask for can be ours if we believe that God is capable of providing it, which of course he can, creator of the universe, all-powerful being. It's ourself that limits that belief. Change your mindset, adjust your mental framework, understand that you can achieve what others have achieved and even innovate and go beyond that, but you have to believe that it's possible.
Welcome back to the Life and Faith podcast. We have our special guest, Cody, with us today. Welcome back, buddy.
I appreciate it. I had so much fun last time, so it's good to be back.
Yeah, we're happy to have you, and
It's
nice to have a little change of pace, or sort of like off the, off the normal thing, or change of practice, change of pace thing for us. So we're happy to have you. So you brought something with you today, a topic.
I did, yeah. So topic I have for us today is something that I've been thinking about a lot personally, and it's something that admittedly I struggle with oftentimes, and it's this idea that, and I have to be careful when I say this, and I have to add some caveats after it. The idea that your perception and your mindset kind of shapes your reality. And my caveat here is there's this kind of new age religious belief of like manifestation, law of attraction, that kind of thing, where they have this idea, which is that your mind controls your reality, but their idea of it is in a literal sense, where it's like you are able to manifest things just by thinking them to be real or thinking them to be true, which I don't believe, and I obviously think is something that is not biblical.
Right.
But this mental framework of you being able to control your reality, quote unquote, this is something that it's very common through all sorts of religions. It's been an idea that has been discussed by philosophers throughout much of history. I actually have this quote here. I'll butcher the name. It's Lao Tzu, I think. Born 571 BC. He was a Chinese philosopher. The quote.
Are you talking about Lao Tzu?
Lao Tzu? Is
Yeah,
that
would be the founder of Taoism, I think.
Probably.
Yeah.
Yep.
Lao Tzu.
So you've probably heard the quote.
Well, maybe I have, but he wrote the Tao Te Ching.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, when I was looking online for his name, I saw like 3 or 4 different spellings of it. So it was kind of like up in the air. Pick one and kind of hope for the best.
Yeah. When
I
I
do that
was
all the time.
when I was sorry, Josh, I don't mean to interrupt you there.
No worries.
When I was finding my faith, and even since then, I'm casually interested in other religions just to know sort of what they say. There's ones that are more complicated or less complicated that, I don't dig into like the ones that seem more, I guess, more complicated than Christianity, because I have a hard enough time understanding that. But I like ones that are simple, and I think like I spent a lot of times like not really studying, but just kind of dabbling in like Eastern religion and stuff like that, and like Buddhism and Taoism and stuff like that are just really, really interesting to me. I don't know. It's like it just has a cool. It's more of it's good as a philosophy, not great as a religion. That's how I look at it.
You'll notice that a lot of these religions, Eastern religions, and of course Christianity shares a lot in common with Islam and Judaism. They have kind of a lot of the same core tenets, which can kind of lead you to the idea of, maybe there's a divine inspiration and it was their interpretation of something that we all believe.
Mm-hmm.
So this quote, which I love, it's watch your thoughts, they become your words. Watch your words, they become your actions. Watch your actions, they become your habits. Watch your habits, they become your character. Watch your character, it becomes your destiny. Okay, so it's the idea of the way you perceive the world around you is a reflection of what you will achieve in the world. We all know these people who are down and depressed all the time, and talking to them, you just get this sense of there is no positivity. Everything it's like a confirmation bias. It's like, oh, my life sucks. I don't make enough money. I can't get a girlfriend. Things like that. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy because you're down on yourself all the time. and then you only focus on the negative, you ignore the positive, and it just starts this cycle of negative thought. This is like a core tenet of so many of the modern or relatively modern self-help books. It's basically foundational to that. As a Man Thinketh by James Allen is a classic example.
That's good.
Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill, that's another one.
Yep.
And
That's
then,
the one I'm most familiar with.
yeah. And then even meditations, the idea of Stoicism, Marcus Aurelius. The idea of Stoicism is, we can't control what happens to us. We can only control our reaction to that. There's this idea that Stoicism is like not caring, but that's not really the case. Stoicism is more so taking things as they come and not letting it affect you to a degree where you're not capable of moving past it.
Yeah.
So
A calmness under pressure.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. Meditation is a really short book too. So if anybody has any interest in actually reading about one of the foundational thinkers, Meditations was actually never meant to be published. It was like a personal diary type thing for Marcus Aurelius. So it's like reflections on his own life and lessons he's learned and things like that. But yeah, the idea of Stoicism is like things happen. They're not necessarily good or bad. It's up to you to perceive how they affect you, So this framework is so important because what happens is if we are able to always see the positive and always look for, quote unquote silver lining, or try to discern what the positives are in a situation, you can legitimately alter your state of being to where it's like, okay, if I'm constantly looking for a way forward, or if I'm constantly looking for the positives in a situation, I'm going to find it, and then the converse is also true, where it's like if I'm constantly looking at the negatives, it's going to lead to a negative life. Okay. Are you guys familiar with Alex Hormozy at all?
Sure. Yep. I mean, I'm familiar with him.
Yeah.
I know of him. I'm not super familiar.
Alex Hormozy is like an entrepreneur kind of guy. He started kind of his story is really cool. He had a white collar job working some security job for the government, super high clearance, gave that up in order to be a personal trainer, making $14 an hour, built some businesses. He had some gyms. He opened several gyms, and then transitioned to launching gyms for other people, doing turnarounds. Went from that to licensing with Gym Launch, a company he had, where he would license this kind of framework that he used to build gyms and to make them profitable and to bring in customers. And then from there, he exited that business, like 8 or 9 figures or whatever, had a couple of other business, like a supplements business. And now he owns a business that he parked his income or capital in from that and now invests in other business, helps grow them 2x, 5x, in order to increase the value. So does like $100 million a year in his companies.
Yeah. Wow.
So I just listened to this video where he talked about there's 4 different people when it comes to setting and achieving goals. And the ideas here where there's a positive active, a positive passive, a negative passive, and a negative active. Okay. So we'll kind of go over each of these and what the idea is behind it. So the positive active is like the top level of achiever. And these are the people who think it's not impossible, so I can do it. He talked about the first person to run. It was, I think, a 4-minute mile. It had never been done before, but there's nothing that physically precludes that from happening. So they thought, okay, well, it's not physically impossible. Nothing is stopping me from being able to do it, so I can achieve it. So it's the highest order of self-belief, or like positive thinking. The level below that is the positive passive. And this is the idea that other people have done it, so I can do it. So it's not quite to the same degree of like being a pioneer or leading something, but it's the positive thought of, well, if other people can do it, I know that it's possible, and I know that I can do it too. So that's the second level, where it's just a step down, where you need that additional affirmation that it is indeed possible. You don't have so much of the breaking the boundary kind of mindset, but you can follow in someone else's footsteps and achieve what others have already achieved. A step below that is the negative passive. These are the people who think, well, other people have done it. I know that it's possible. Let's see if I can do it. So it's more passive, where it's like you don't have the 100% belief in yourself. You can see that it's possible. You think you may be able to do it, but there's an inkling of self-doubt there where you're not sure 100% whether or not you can achieve it, and you give yourself it's like giving yourself a little bit of a pass, where it's like, let's see if I can do it, and if I can't, that's okay. Versus what you would call the positive passive, who are thinking, well, if they can do it, I know that I can do it. Okay, so there's a little bit of a step down there. And then below that, which is kind of the lowest order of thinking, which a lot of people fall into this lowest category, which is the negative active. Other people have done it. I know that it's possible, but here's the reasons why it won't work for me.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
And that's, like we were talking about, this becomes that self-fulfilling prophecy. Because if you're constantly telling yourself, well, yeah, it works for other people, but it's never going to work for me. Here's all the reasons it's not going to work for me. It's like, you ever heard the expression, whether you think you can or you think you can, you're right?
Yeah.
I was just
You know?
thinking that.
Yep.
So, and that's 100% truth. It's like, if something isn't physically stopping you from being able to achieve something, other people have done the thing more often than not, unless you're doing some crazy engineering, something that is beyond the realm. Like if you're Elon Musk doing Starlink and, Neuralink and whatever, it's like, okay, then it's like, okay, is this possible? Am I able to do it? But more often than not, what you're trying to do has been done before.
Mm-hmm.
People have become wealthy in real estate. People have, saved a marriage from the brink of collapsing, and
People have run a 5K.
Yeah, exactly. Even as simple as that.
Yeah, how many people are like, oh, I could never do that? And I'm like, yeah, you could.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's absolutely achievable. And I know it's hard.
Yeah.
It's difficult. But like I talk about this a lot, but it's like I think there's value to be added in a person's life. I think you could I would like to figure out how to make a business, and perhaps I've even attempted to do that even with this podcast or with, personal training or whatever. I think there is a business, or there's value to be added by convincing people that things that they think are impossible are possible. And I'm not talking about making them into a 1 in a million out of 1 in a million.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Some people just won't ever be able to dunk. Yeah. But you can definitely deadlift your body weight. You can definitely, you know what I mean? It's like, you can do this. It just, and some people have physical limitations. They can't lift certain weights or whatever because of medical things, and that's always true. But I do believe, like, you can be disciplined enough to accomplish things that you maybe think are impossible right now. And if you flush all that stuff away, if you stop being the negative active, you'll find that it's like washing the windows off and the sun starts to shine through, and you go, oh, okay, it is possible. Whether you will or not, that's a different thing altogether.
Right.
But I do believe convincing people that the thing they think is impossible is possible, there's value there.
Yeah, and I don't want to jump too far in this subject, but I think a lot of what holds people back is baked into our culture is instant gratification.
Oh, yeah.
So the hard things that you're talking about doing that you got to almost convince yourself that you can, as long as you put your mind to it. People are like, well, I tried that, or somebody told me that all I have to do is X, Y, and Z, and I did it, but I didn't see results. And it's like, okay, but how long were you trying for before you gave up? Yeah,
100%. And so much of this has to do with social media, I think, the instant gratification and this idea that it's like a 10-year overnight success. It's like you're seeing this on Instagram where this person is massively wealthy or successful, or and I also want to make this caveat: is success looks different for everybody, and it doesn't necessarily indicate financial success or power or things like that,
or following, right?
Yeah, exactly. Acumen or popularity or things like that. Success looks different for different people, and can present itself in a lot of different ways. You can be successful in your relationship with God. You can be successful in your marriage. You can be successful as a parent, and successful in just terms of fulfillment that you feel in your life. So success is not necessarily like, oh, I make a ton of money and everything. I don't have to worry about what I shopped for at the grocery store.
Well, that's why that clear picture of the finish line is so important. You know what I mean? Because you might think like money is a thing. And you go, well, money is be great, if I had all this money. And it's like, well, why? You know, if you know the clarity of like, well, because when I get to be this age, I won't want to do this, that, and the other thing, or I will want to do this, that, and the other thing, or I have so many years left of activity and I want to travel to these different places, you know, then that becomes the definition of success. Success for me might be one really awesome trip per year in my beyond 50, 60, 70, 80 years old, one really cool trip a year. You know what I mean? If you're a traveling person or whatever.
Yeah.
So, like, or maybe your success is like, okay, I just want to be able to like bend down and tie my shoes without getting out of breath.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? And then that becomes success. So the clearer picture you have of that, I think, is so critical to the whole process of a better life, a happier existence, a happier. You know what I mean? Because you just can't, like you're saying, Josh, you can't just flip a switch and be happy if there's all this other stuff going on. You know what I mean? You can't just. It's not instant gratification is not. It's only possible in certain situations. You know,
right?
It's almost
Very
never.
few.
It's almost never as easy as just flipping a switch.
And I'd say almost anything that is as simple as that is probably not that worthwhile.
Probably
Right.
just
to achieve.
even if you get that, you know, a lot of these people get famous on social media or whatever. A lot of that stuff is like flash in the pan type stuff.
Yeah.
It's like you're famous for a season.
One hit wonder.
Exactly. You know, you have these people who blow up on social media and then 3 months later, nobody talks about them anymore.
Well, I can feel instant gratification from doing something productive. Do you know what I mean? Like if I might not necessarily get to that 4-minute mile, but I feel gratified when I do. If I go to the gym when I don't want to. That to me is okay. Now that's somewhat instant because that finish line is not run the 4-minute mile. The finish line is do something today to better myself tomorrow.
In my opinion, I don't think that's instant gratification. I think the instant gratification is more so that's like a satisfaction that you receive for doing something for a delayed result, because your result isn't like, oh, I went to the gym one day. You feel fulfillment from that because you know, okay, I did this one day. It's one step out of 1,000 on my journey. And I know at the end of this journey, I'll have a body that I like better, or I'll have better health and I'll be able to live longer and enjoy my family longer. So it's like, there's a difference between the instant gratification of like, oh, I just want to, a lot of the instant gratification is like, have pleasure now and pain later.
I see.
You know, versus the pain now of like, I really don't want to go to the gym.
Yeah, it's like eating that donut versus going to the gym or something, you know.
Exactly.
It's like, yeah, that's not going to hurt.
I see what you mean.
Exactly.
Yeah,
It's like, okay.
pleasure now, pain later.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't want to go to the gym. I don't want to do this workout. I'm going to do it anyway. And I feel better after because I know I'm working towards my goal versus, yeah, it would have felt better to just sit home and, you know, lay up on the couch and kind of do nothing. But that's the pleasure now, pain later. You're going to suffer for that in the future.
Yeah.
I honestly think another element of this too is a lot of what could be, if people were to switch gears in their mind, like you're talking about, there's different levels. The norm and what has saturated our society is just like, you know, there's so little that people are passionate about these days, or I shouldn't say that they're passionate about, but there's so little what am I trying to say, like the things that you have to work towards. There are things that people are passionate about today, but it's the easily achievable things. So few people are trying to achieve the things that are harder because it's just become the norm. Like for example, we're talking about health, physical health, and people are just used to like, yeah, I feel this way, but you know, there's pills for that, or there's this, that, and the other, and it's like, or you know, you could put in all this work over here instead of popping a pill, and improve your health so you don't even need that anymore. But that's and it's just you look around you and everybody's living that way, and you're like, well, that's just normal. So what's become the normal is like this kind of backseat approach to it.
Ozempic is one of the most popular pharmaceuticals today, and that's just like an injectable that you take and it suppresses appetite, and a lot of people are using it because it makes weight loss easy.
Yep.
It's like,
it's a high value proposition for people of like, instant results.
Keep doing the same thing that you're doing. Make no lifestyle changes. All you do is once a week you go to the doctor, you get a shot in your butt, and then you get to lose some weight.
with no thought for potential,
long-term impact.
long-term impact. Yeah.
And it's like, what would you rather have? Would you rather, well, and for a lot of people, they'd rather do the first one, which is do nothing, change nothing, and still lose the weight, but at potential long-term expense? Or would you rather really grind it out, work super hard for the next 6 months, a year, make it a lifestyle that follows you through your life, and then you'll be healthy, actually, and not just losing weight. You can lose weight and still be very unhealthy. You know, if you're eating like garbage, you're putting a bunch of bad stuff into your body. Well, you lost 40 pounds, but your cholesterol is still high, and you still are pre-diabetic because you eat nothing but carbs and sugars all day. So it's like...
I know a guy that's kind of the way you described, and we've been he's on our prayer list, but it's one of those things where, so let me explain a little bit of it, and you'll kind of see where I'm coming from. He ended up in the hospital, and he owns his own business, so that's how he's keeping his family afloat. And they were like, the doctor's like, you got to make some drastic changes here. Like, this is you almost died. And come to find out, this is a guy who he absolutely, like, his favorite place in the world to go to is Culver's. And he doesn't just go to Culver's like pretty much every day. He'll go there sometimes twice a day. And when he orders, it's an entire tray of food, like burgers upon burgers. Number one, I'm like, how does this guy afford all this?
Yeah,
because
Culver's is expensive.
Culver's is not cheap. And in this economy, it's even more crazy. So,
I mean,
but then
if you're going to go down, though, that's a pretty good way to go.
I
So
honestly,
true.
I wonder that about this guy. I wonder if that's not true for this guy, because the dude gets out of the hospital like, whew, like, imagine like wiping your brow like, glad I survived that.
Let's go get
All
a
right, let's go get
celebratory butter burger.
Yeah,
You know?
he literally was like right back to it. And
Wiping
then
his brow is like a butter burger.
Yeah,
It's
right.
just butter burger brow.
so
'Cause
you know
those
we're
burgers, they have like a little bit of a sheen.
yeah.
right.
So we're concerned about this family, and we're concerned about him, obviously, and we're praying for this guy. And then somebody comes in like prayer meeting, and they're like, I had we were on a date, and lo and behold, we go to Culver's, and who's there?
This guy.
This guy. And it's like, you're like, you feel so bad, but it's like they have to want it. And that's, I think, a big step of what you're talking about.
Well, and to believe that it's possible.
Yeah.
You know what I
Right.
mean? And that's what I find a lot, especially like when we talk about mental health and stuff like that, because a lot of the people who really suffer with that, I mean, I'm not trying to categorize every person who has a mental health issue, but there are a lot of people who don't really realize that if they let go, they'll be able to pull their hand out of the jar.
Oh, yeah.
100%.
You know what I mean? They don't really understand that they can do that just yet, but you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
I've been there. You know what I mean? I've
It's
been
difficult.
there, but
It's extremely difficult in the moment. A lot of people struggle with this. This is something that I've struggled with on and off for years and years now, especially as like an adolescent, older teenager. I really struggled with mental health, so like severe depression. And I developed this mindset later on in life where it's like, if you're living in a season of depression or something like that, a lot of it is, and it sounds kind of harsh to say this, but a lot of that can be under your control. It's like if you're constantly thinking, life sucks, everything is horrible, why does this keep happening to me? It's like you're only focusing on the negatives, and it becomes that self-fulfilling prophecy where it's like, okay, well, if you're only focusing on the negatives, you'll not notice anything positive. Thanks. This framework of negative thoughts beget negative thoughts beget negative thoughts, and you are a product of that. If you're constantly thinking negative, you will experience negative in your life. On the converse, if you are constantly thinking positively, I want to talk about, you guys familiar with the book The Secret?
oh yeah.
Probably the most misunderstood book in all of existence. The Secret is a book that talks about this. It's kind of akin to the law of attraction or the manifestation kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so misunderstood because people get the idea where it's like, oh, if I just think and believe that I have something, I'll get it. It's like, that's not what the book is saying. The book is saying you have to change your mental framework, believe that it is yours, But that doesn't mean you don't have to do anything and magically you're going to become a millionaire. And magically you're going to achieve this success. It's about changing your mental framework so that you put yourself in a position to work towards what it is you desire, right? It's like you have this positive mental attitude where it's like, I know what I want. I believe that I can have it. And here's the action steps I need to take in order to achieve it. Okay. And I do have a bunch of scripture here that kind of backs up that idea. I'll go through a few of them. Mark 11:23-24. Truly I tell you, if anyone says to this mountain, go throw yourself into the sea, and does not doubt in their heart, but believes that what they say will happen, it will be done for them. Therefore I tell you, whatever you ask in prayer, believe that you have received it, and it will be yours. Okay? So this is the idea of the converse of the manifestation law of attraction, where it's this belief that I am capable of producing this in my life, versus what we believe according to Scripture, which is God can provide for us, but we have to have that faith. We have to have that positive belief that what we ask for can be ours if we believe that God is capable of providing it, which of course he can, creator of the universe, all-powerful being. It's ourself that limits that belief. The parallel to that in Matthew 17:20, because of your little faith, for truly I say to you, if you have faith like a grain of a mustard seed, you will say to this mountain, move from here to there, and it will move, and nothing will be impossible for you. So it's, the parallel between the different chapters there. James 1:6-7, but when you ask, you must believe and not doubt, because the one who doubts is like a wave of the sea, blown and tossed by the wind. That person should not expect to receive anything from the Lord. So there's the converse of that. If you have the faith of a mustard seed, you can move mountains. If you ask and don't believe that you can receive it, it's impossible for you, So it's all about that, the mental framework that you operate under. If you believe that it is possible, it is indeed possible. And as we see, we have this confirmation. Other people have done it. Why can't you? Versus if you have this negative thought where it's like, oh, I would love to be able to communicate better with my wife, but we just can't do that because we fight all the time, and you have this negative mental image. And well, of course, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you have this negative belief where, oh, it might work for other people, but this isn't going to work for me, you're probably right. You know?
There's also, I think, a spiritual element to it as well. Like you're talking a lot about the mental, but it's tied body, mind, and soul, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes it is kind of the first hurdle, I guess, with your mind. But some of these things, like if we're talking about spiritual things that people are like, I don't think I can ever achieve this spiritual goal. Well, first of all, have you been scripturally saved? Have you called upon the name of the Lord? And beyond that, because, the Bible, I've said this before on the podcast, but it's the difference between being alive spiritually and being dead spiritually. Before you're saved, before you ask Christ to save you, you're dead, and so you can't discern these spiritual things. But yeah, I think there's those three elements there for sure.
I think I don't know if you're going to bring up this verse, but there is the other one that says, seek first the kingdom of God.
Yeah.
Right?
I was thinking that one too.
So it really kind of, in my mind, it comes down to, is the thing that you're wanting something that is in the will of the Lord? Like, for example, you might say, I need money, right? And your reason you need money is so that you can, live this lavish lifestyle.
Yeah,
that's
vanity, ego.
Vanity, yeah, right.
And
like your point about one of you made the point about communicating with your wife. That's something, okay, I want this restored marriage. I want this a great relationship with my kids. I want to use money for the kingdom of the Lord. I want to be this person who, and the sooner you connect with those things, the sooner you sort of like, you think about what's really important and you weigh those things. Because in my mind, it is like, okay, I will need a reliable vehicle to get back and forth. Do you know what I'm saying? That not necessarily a flashy vehicle, but a reliable one, right? And that's going to take money. So, like, if I'm to do the kingdom's work,
a lot of
you're just going to need, you know what I mean? And those things, and that's what it's sort of where that aspect comes in. It's not just believe whatever you want for yourself. I wish I had a popcorn machine in my bedroom. Poof.
Yeah. A lot of times,
It's like
you're talking about the financial side of things. A lot of times with finances, a person may word it or may even pray in such a way that says, "I need more money." But the root of it actually is they don't want to be a slave to debt anymore. They want the freedom to not have to be in bondage over finances and things like that.
right.
They may not have the wherewithal to pray that way, and I'll even say, even myself, maybe I don't pray that way sometimes. But that's the root of it. So if you can kind of voice that to God, and money may not necessarily be your answer. It may be better stewardship and all that kind of stuff. So
Right, and I think, and I've known you for some time now. I would say that your definition of success is almost not monetary. Your definition of success, in my evaluation of you, looking in from the outside, is successful relationships with your family, their successful relationships with the Lord.
right,
That kind of is the core center. And yeah, there's money involved because you obviously, you're not being a success if you and your family are out on the street.
right,
Yeah.
Mhm.
But that's not your driving thing. You know what I'm saying?
yeah.
So
Yeah,
that's-
I've got more to say to that too, but I'll let Cody, because I think he's going somewhere with this.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I was just going back to what you said about the mind, body, soul. It's all connected. One of the verses I had here was Galatians 6:7. Do not be deceived. God is not mocked. For whatever one sows, that will he also reap.
Yeah.
So, and that can be applied broadly to each of those aspects. It's like
Right.
if you're sowing a mental attitude, that's what you'll reap as negativity in your life. If you have a bad relationship with the Lord, you're not praying and you're not communicating with Him, and you're not in Scripture, you'll have a poor spiritual life. And as we read earlier, it reminds me of the Sermon on the Mount. It's one of the first pieces of Scripture that really stuck with me. Therefore, I tell you, do not worry about what you will drink or what you will wear, for the Lord knows that you need these things. This verse resonated so much with me because I oftentimes had lived in such high anxiety about, provision and things of that nature. And we're told, it's like, if you believe, He will take care of you. You know? So it's like, what you sow, so too shall you reap. And that applies to broadly all aspects of your life. It's like, if you have this negative relationship with God, if you have this negative mindset, if you treat your body poorly, you see the result of that. That's what you reap, So
treating your spirit poorly and ingesting things that are just terrible for your spirit, like, you know what I mean? Like, and it doesn't have to always be
people
like,
separate those categories a lot. Even Christians will do that, but they very much are connected in more ways than probably we can understand this side of heaven.
Yeah. I feel that way about horror movies and being fearful and stuff. It's fine if that's what your thing is. I don't, I wouldn't necessarily tell somebody else they couldn't, but it's just not. I don't dig on fear, and I think it's like it's spoken of against pretty much in every book of the Bible. It's
if fear is not of God, then
that's where I'm at with it.
Like.
So that's sort of changed in my head, because before I would just say like that. I feel that way about stand-up comedy a lot. I know we've probably talked about this, but but like stand-up comedy, you're kind of taking in a lot of garbage. You know what I mean? And is it necessary that you're gonna like divorce your wife if you listen to stand-up comedy? No, but you're just eating junk food.
True.
Spiritual junk food, and it's
if the door's just open, any kind of comedian.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, Kiri and I used to watch a bunch of like scary horror type movies. And over the last year and a half, 2 years or so, she's really pushed us away from that. She's like, I just don't want to welcome that into our home. It's so much negativity and it feels bad. It's like a negative energy, and I just don't want it in our home. And, I've followed her in that, and we don't really watch that stuff anymore. And I definitely understand it's like you're putting yourself in a negative space for entertainment. That seems kind of...
Yeah, I don't even like when people jump around a corner and scare me. I don't even like that level of fear.
Yeah.
Tell that to Kiri, because she does that to me all the time.
That's how she gets that. Like, she's still got an element of it.
Right. And that's like I say, that's just the way. That's fine. I don't have a problem with other people doing that. But I just think, like, if somebody does it to me, like, I've had to be serious with a number of people. Like, hey, I appreciate what you're doing, but please don't ever do it again.
But do you really appreciate it, Dan?
No, I don't.
I understand.
You're right. I lied to them. I'm going to go ask for forgiveness. You remember when I said I appreciated it? I lied.
I didn't.
At all. I didn't appreciate it at all. Our son would jump out from cars, and he does it to my wife and stuff, but they get a kick out of it. But
Yeah.
I had to get serious with them and be like, don't ever,
Yeah.
One thing I've heard, this kind of, I saw it in the framework of business, but it works in many other aspects of life also, which is that everything works. You just have to do the work, So it's like any field that you pursue, people always ask like, oh, how can I get rich, or, things of that nature. It's like, well, anything works if you work on it. There's no secret. There's no hidden, nobody's keeping anything from you. Most of the information you're looking for is available freely to you. It's just there's no shortcuts. You have to wake up every day and pursue what it is that you desire. Know your why. Have a good why. For what reason are you pursuing this? Like we talked about, why are you pursuing money? To make sure my family is comfortable and make sure I'm providing for them and make sure that they don't have to struggle, things of that nature. You have to have a good why. Otherwise, you're pursuing for vanity or ego, or it's vacuous, really. So, everything works. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, should I go with a calisthenics body workout or should I do free weights? It's like, it doesn't matter. Pick one and stick with it, and it will work.
True. Yeah, the one you stick with and are consistent with is going to be better than even if that one produced better results, but you just fizzle out on it. I've heard this in. It's funny. This may be a little bit divisive for our listeners, but for those who conceal carry, I've heard lots of people say, like, when it comes to what type of firearm you carry. Do the one that you're going to be more likely to go out and shoot and practice with, because it's far better than getting a gun that everybody recommends but you don't necessarily like, or it's not comfortable for you. The one that's more comfortable for you is the one that you're going to shoot more and you're going to become, and that is better than the best gun out there.
Yeah.
If you're not really going to, and that applies to a whole bunch of other things, not just that.
Yep. So, one last piece of scripture here that kind of ties all into it. Proverbs 4:23. More than anything you guard, protect your mind, for life flows from it. So kind of foundational there, all the way in Proverbs, which is, like the book of wisdom. Guard your mind, protect your thoughts, because that really shapes who you become, it shapes your habits, it shapes your actions. But nothing in life comes easy. Nothing worth having comes easy. Take up your cross. You have to bear a burden in order to achieve results. Nothing in life comes free.
Right.
This buddy of mine, nothing related. It was like a business issue I was having, something I had to learn how to rebuild in my business, piece of machinery. And he said, you got to pay to go to college. Nothing comes free. No knowledge, no achievement. You got to quote unquote pay to go to college. It's like
somebody's footing that bill.
Yeah, exactly. It's like you don't necessarily pay with your money all the time, but you pay with your time. You pay with your effort.
Right.
You pay with your consistency. You don't get ripped overnight. You don't become a financial success in an industry you just started in, 6 months ago. You don't improve your marriage by, having one 30-minute talk with your spouse and okay, now everything's all good to go. It's like dedicated, consistent effort is how you achieve what you want to achieve.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, there's a difference between having the right attitude and thinking optimistically and manipulating the world with your mind.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? You're not changing the material world with your thoughts. You're taking things under that sort of, you have the world coming in and you have your spiritual background or your beliefs about the nature of God and what it is, and then you have your reaction to it. You know what I mean? And that's the part we're talking about, not necessarily like manifesting. I always think is like putting taking the effect and making it the cause.
Agreed.
Right? Like switching it around and saying, if I think, therefore it will be. Well, okay, hold on.
Yeah. It's like you're kind of barking up the right tree, but you're in the wrong field. Or
I don't know how to carry that metaphor out farther.
That's why this became so popular, the manifestation and law of attraction stuff, because it's like, wait a minute, you mean if I just think about it hard enough, then I can have whatever I want and I have to do nothing for it? Awesome. Yeah, let's do that. And it's like, no. you're misunderstanding it as a principle. And like I said, this principle, 571 AD, this guy was born, and it's the same concept of you have to think that you can achieve it. You have to understand the pathway to achieve it and believe that it can happen. But there's no shortcuts. You have to put in the work to get to where you want to be. It's just not having those limiting beliefs of, the negative active, where it's like, well, other people can do it, but here's 6 reasons why I'm not able to do it.
It's weird to me that anybody has that attitude, because like, why even be there? Why even think that? If you want, if that's such a, I think maybe the reason people are there, or why so many people land there, is because it almost feels like they don't have any culpability in the situation. It's like, if I can't do it because of this external thing, it won't really be my fault that I didn't.
I think so. I think that
Yeah.
plays a big factor. I think a lot of it also has to do with this idea of like the time horizon that people are looking at, because they see other successful people. Maybe they've tried this business or something like that. Maybe they've tried working on their body and they think, oh, well, I did this for 3 months and I didn't get any results, so I can't do this. And then I tried this other thing for 4 months and I didn't get anywhere. And it's like, okay, so you develop this negative mental framework where it's like, well, these other people did it, but I wasn't able to do it. And it's like, well, what you don't see on their Instagram posts that they made a year ago, just started posting on social media, you don't see the 9 years worth of 60-hour weeks that they put in.
The iceberg.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
Above the water versus below.
Yeah. Exactly. So change your mindset, adjust your mental framework, understand that you can achieve what others have achieved and even innovate and go beyond that. But you have to believe that it's possible. And that's foundational to your progress, is understanding that whatever you feel is within the realm of possibility is achievable, as long as you believe in it and as long as you're taking those steps, putting the work in, taking action on the different stepping stones towards that goal. It's 100% achievable. Expand your time horizon. Good things don't happen overnight. You're not going to become a success in any aspect really over 6 months or a year. You have to put in long-term dedicated work. Think 5 years down the road or 10 years down the road. If I put this work in now, where will I be later?
After the 1000th time you've done that.
Yeah.
That's when the real results you start seeing. So I was thinking of one other verse when you were talking, and I think it plays into this idea of what you're talking about here today, Cody. It not just putting in the positive things, but also kind of taking captive and eliminating some of the negative things. There's negative thoughts. We've kind of talked about that throughout this episode, of the negative thoughts of like, oh, well, that person can do it, but I can't. Like, removing those negative thoughts. And a little bit of backstory before I read this verse. I've been talking with my daughter, who is 8. She's close to 9. And her whole life, she's kind of struggled with this medically, what I think it's called is vasovagal syncope. And basically what it is the vasovagal system. I think it has to do with your nervous system. But it makes a person to where it easily triggers them into having a physical response to something that they're seeing or hearing. And she is very sensitive to this. So what it looks like is, say if there's prayer requests going on and somebody's talking about poison ivy was an example in her Sunday school one time. The little girl was talking about having poison ivy. And about 30 seconds or so of her talking about it, my daughter had passed out just from hearing like the poison ivy being described.
Wow.
So it doesn't take much. And like one time at our church, somebody was talking about their eye and the surgery and what they have to do with the eye. And it's funny because I'm a little bit like that. It's just kind of makes my skin crawl. But for her, it's like she'll full on pass out. So we've been trying to coach her through it and talk her through it. Because, I hear some people, they would be saying, well, that's a medical thing. Okay, to some degree, but like we were saying earlier, body, mind, and spirit, it's all connected. So we've been kind of talking her through, and one of the main verses that comes up a lot when I'm talking to her about it is 2 Corinthians 10:5, where it says, casting down imaginations, that word can also mean arguments, and every high thing that exalteth itself against the knowledge of God, and bringing into captivity every thought to the obedience of Christ. So there's obviously a specific thing that Paul is talking about here, but I think the principle rings true for everything. Like how you think is the direction you're going to head in. And I think about the example of Lot in the Bible. He initially pitched his tent towards Sodom, and then years later down the road, we find out he's living in there, and he's actually some kind of maybe a political leader in that town. And so when it's talking about taking thoughts and specifically taking captive those negative thoughts, it says to the obedience of Christ. I think that's what you were getting at earlier, Dan, when you were saying like the obedience and the will of God. Matthew 6:33 is absolutely a great one where it talks about, I think you quoted it earlier, but seek ye first the kingdom of God, and all these things will be added to you. And his righteousness. So it's talking about an obedience to God. And I think of also the example of, I think it was a rich man who came to Jesus, or he's at least a religious man, and he said, I've kept the law, what's preventing me from, being saved and all that. And he said, the greatest of these were summed up in love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and mind. He lists those things out. That goes into what we're talking about because they're all tied together, right? And so if we love him, we're obeying him. And he's talking about, you're talking about obedience. I'm talking about the love, the motivating factor behind what will give you true success. And really, eternal life, right? Because that's what he's essentially talking about there. And this last verse that I was thinking about when you were talking about it is what I often talk to my kids about, and have actually had to memorize it. We actually sing it as a song. I'm not going to sing it, so don't worry. If you're thinking about like, oh great, he's about to sing.
In the Hebrew.
Yeah, in the Hebrew. That would be impressive. Joshua 1:8 says, and this is, by the way, the one book and the one verse in the Bible that actually uses the word success. There might be two, but I think I remember somebody saying it was the only one. For sure, not more than two. Verse 8 says, this book of the law shall not depart out of thy mouth, but thou shalt meditate therein day and night, that thou mayest observe to do according to all that is written therein, for then thou shalt make thy way prosperous, and then thou shalt have good success. So I view that in parallel with what Jesus said in Matthew 6:33, because if you will make me your primary focus, then you can achieve these things, as long as it's in my will and all that. And Christ is saying, before you focus your mind on the positive things, everything that we're talking about, it's important, but the foundation is focus on Christ and his ability to help you get there and to achieve it, because it is a body, mind, and spirit thing. Thank you for listening to the Life and Faith podcast. If you've enjoyed today's episode, please consider subscribing, leaving a review on your favorite platform, and sharing it with friends and family. Your support helps us continue spreading the gospel of faith, hope, and love. Connect with us on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and many others to stay updated on our latest episodes. See the link in the show notes for all our social media channels. And until next time, it is our hope you'll commit yourself to an even deeper life and faith.